Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everyone. We are live from Yogyakarta and welcome to Bincang Asean, presented by the ASEAN Study Center from the Faculty of Social and Political Science at Universitas Gadjah Mada. On behalf of the ASEAN Study Center, UGM, thank you for joining this session. I'm Dias Kurniawan, the Program Manager at the ASEAN Study Center UGM. I am delighted to serve as the Master of Ceremonies for today's event. First, I would like to thank the distinguished speakers, moderators, ASC UGM researcher, and our participants for taking the time to attend our event despite your busy schedules. I hope everyone is in a good condition wherever you are. Before we start our discussion, I would like to provide a bit of our information for today's event. The Bincang ASEAN series is a scientific forum discussion aimed to provide a stage for researchers to present their ideas and receive feedback from peers for their research, particularly on Southeast Asia studies. Along with its development, the series expanded to also invite experts and practitioners to share their ASEAN-related experience in our forum with the aim of mainstreaming Southeast Asia studies to ASC UGM audience. Today, we would like to take a look on the 2021 edition of ASC UGM Monograph, Advancing Southeast Asia Through Gender Mainstreaming. With that, joining with us, we have Her Excellency Ms. Yuyun Wahyuningrum and Mr. Mark Joel Mcbasabarido as the Board of Editors of the Monograph. Also, we would like to welcome and also to congratulate the authors of 10 research topics featured in the ASC UGM Monograph 2021 edition. I believe that the audience and I are both excited to see your amazing works and research findings. So once again, congratulations on the launching of the monograph. Before we begin, I would like to inform everyone participating in today's discussion that if you have any question you would like to ask, please send it directly to the chat box or raise your hand during the open discussion session. To begin the discussion, I would like to introduce our moderator, Mr. Tunggul Wicaksono, who will introduce our speaker and facilitate the discussion. Tunggul Wicaksono is a research manager at the ASEAN Study Center, Universitas Gadjah Mada. His primary roles involves managing prominent issues, determining research priorities, and developing a roadmap for the center. His current research interests include peace studies and the dynamic of maritime security in ASEAN countries. And he is also one of the ASC UGM 2021 Monograph editor. So as we are really excited to hear more, I would like to provide the time and the stage for Mr. Tunggul. Mr. Tunggul, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Dias Kurniawan, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. And this event is brought to you by ASEAN Study Center Universitas Gadjah Mada, and you can follow up on our social media and Instagram at ASC UGM, Facebook at ASEAN Study Center UGM, or visit our website at asc.visipol.ugm.ac.id. My name is Tunggul Wicaksono, and I am the research manager at the ASEAN Study Center, and I'm delightful to present you in our today's webinar to present the interesting topic of our recently published monograph titled Advancing Southeast Asia Through Gender Mainstreaming. And we will have a discussion regarding to the topic with the editorial boards who are Ibu Yuyun and Joel. And thank you for joining in this meeting room. And we will have also the discussion with the authors and the co-authors. And just for a little housekeeping before we get started, and we really would like to hear from you, and we would like to include your voice in the conversation. So if you have any questions during the presentation, during the discussion, please do not hesitate to type them into the comment section or the chat box. And I'll bring them up during the presentation, and we will have the time for the questions and answer at the end. And for a brief background, the scholarly paper submission that launched in ASEAN Study Center UGM aims to encourage scholars in their field of expertise, particularly in ASEAN studies, to review, to discuss the ASEAN states policies and civic issue. And 2021, I suppose, is the momentous time that we have a salient and prominent issue in terms of gender mainstreaming. And to give you a glimpse of the background of our AAC Monograph 2021, we have totally 10 submission and 10 contributors of the ASC 2000 and ASC Monograph 2021, plus a chapter of introduction and the concluding remarks that are written by our editorial board. And for a brief background, there are the current agenda of ASEAN member countries in ASEAN Community Vision 2021, which involve the gender mainstreaming as a prominent topic. And the 2021 edition of ASC Monograph raises the issue of gender mainstreaming that refers to the strategy that ensures the adoption of gender perspectives, as well as the attention to it as a means for centering gender equality agenda in all activities, as well as in the policy development, research, advocacy and dialogues, legislation and resource of allocation. However, the practice of gender mainstreaming policy advocated by the international organizations and international development institutions has received criticism, in which sometimes it fails to capture the context in which women and gender minorities communities are living, and thus eventually obstructing the effectiveness of its objectives itself. And departing from this point, ASC Monograph 2021, we invite the idea of gender mainstreaming to be approached with a more critical engagement in accordance with the lived experience of the women and the gender minorities communities in Southeast Asia, particularly. And in this context, it has a relation in the broader reality of gender-based violence among the few. And I suppose the gender equality issue has become a salient issue considering the most societies in Southeast Asia are predominantly patriarchal, and not to mention the immense occurrence of gender-based violence in the region. And the open submission of the ASC Monograph 2000 and December 2021, and the year's theme explores the subtopics of the first, mapping progress of gender mainstreaming in ASEAN. Second one is addressing gender equality in the workforce. The third, gender identity, participation, and politics of inclusion. Fourth, unraveling gender-based violence during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the last one is strengthening gender advocacy through grassroots movements. And the participants who participated in this proposal research form with their selected subtopics, including the background of the problem, the methodology, and literature review. And finally, we invite and we selected the 10 best papers that has received the review from the editorial board. And this moment is to launch the AAC Monograph 2021 that consists of these subtopics. And the topics were being explored. The participants are the Chen Lily and Martins, who wrote a paper titled "A Gender Analysis of Access to Cesta Basica or Basket, a Case Study of Likista and Dili Municipality of Timor-Leste." And the second contributors is Fatin and Acistis, who wrote the Transnational Advocacy Networks on the SDGs Agenda, Eradication of Violence Against Women in Indonesia. And the next is Vanessa Febrilli, who wrote Advising the State's Action in Protecting the Reproductive Rights of Female Laborers in the Garment Industry, a case study of production laborers in the Setu Garment Factory, West Java. The next is Hazrina, who wrote the Addressing gender-based violence against women in Malaysia during the pandemic. The next, we have Mia Hyun, who wrote The Violence Against Women in ASEAN, Governance Conditions for Policy Reform. As we have also Angam Kavivi, who wrote Why Class and Gender Identity Matter, Learning from Successful Advocacy of the Former of Women Migrant Workers Alliance in Tracap Village, Wonosobo District. And the next one is Museo, who wrote the challenges to the implementation of laws and policies of gender equality and the rights to food in Cambodia. The next we have Tunjung Wijanarko and Christine Diah Panjaitan, who wrote the dual systems theory analysis, the impact of patriarchal structure on equality in the Indonesian workforce. Next, we have Wendy Zhang, who wrote the Gender Identity and Imprisonment, a case study of the Pink Prison in Thailand. And the last one, we have the Duratul Masudah and Shukran Subkis, who wrote Unite to Empower, Exploring the Empowerment Movement of Single Moms Indonesia Community. For the complete chapter, you can read in our website at aac.visipol.ugm.ec.id. And it is my honor to represent the editorial board and authors, as well as the co-authors of 2021 Monograph, to launch the book edition of AAC Monograph 2021. To access the publication, please visit ugm.id/AAC Monograph 2021 as seen in your screen. And in this session, I would like to give the time for our editorial board to present and to explore their experience in writing the monograph and collaborating with the authors to give the review and the feedback, and also to explore more about the in-depth discussion of the monograph itself from each of everyone author that has joined in this meeting room. And at this point, I would like to introduce our first discussion is Ibu Yuyun Wahyuningrum. Ibu Yuyun Wahyuningrum has more than 28 years of experience working in human rights organizations at the national, regional, and international levels, including Human Rights Working Group in Jakarta, Oxfam International in Jakarta, Forum Asia in Bangkok, Child Workers in Asia in Bangkok, the Solidarity Center in Jakarta, and the National Commission on Child Protection in Jakarta. She was team leader of the regional EU-ASEAN Dialogue Instrument on Human Rights Facility 2015 until 2017 to support the human rights work of human rights institution in ASEAN. Her influential piece of writing often appears in the Jakarta Post, Bangkok Post, The Nation, and Talking ASEAN, and in academic journals. And in March 2021, she was appointed as International Democracy Goodwill Ambassador from the 1st of May 2021 until the last day in December 2022 by the Korea Democracy Foundation, Republic of Korea. So welcome, Ibu Yuyun. Thank you for joining in. And for our second discussion, we have Joel Mcbasabarido, who considers himself a Southeast Asian queer feminist academic activist. He pursued an international master's degree in human rights at the Institute of Human Rights and Peace Studies, Mahidol University in Thailand. He is currently the executive director of the Strengthening Human Rights and Peace Research or Education in ASEAN or Southeast Asia program, who is commonly known as SHAPC. Joel is an Obama leader for Asia Pacific 2022. He actively takes part in several international and regional advocacy and academic exercises with the aim of helping realize sexuality embracing, youth-driven, right-centered societies. In his spare time, he indulged in solo traveling in pursuit of witnessing and understanding the complex lived realities of humans in the global south. So welcome, Joel. Perhaps you...
Thank you very much.
unmute your microphone. Okay, thank you. We can hear you very clearly. And I think to start the discussion, I will ask to our editorial boards, Ibu Yun and Joel, why is this topic in which gender mainstreaming considered as a prominent issue in Southeast Asia? We will start from Ibu Yun. We want to hear your perspective in this issue.
Thank you, Tunggul. First, I would like to use this opportunity to congratulate Universitas Gadjah Mada, the ASEAN Study Center, for this project. I know this is not the first project of ASEAN Study Center, but this is very important contribution to the discussion on regionalism in ASEAN, especially on gender mainstreaming. I also would like to congratulate authors for their hard work. We learned so much from their analysis, the way they see the world from their perspective, from their views, and from their way of analysis. And we appreciate your willingness to engage and listen for this, all the conversation, because this is a peer review. I think this is a very important component of this research. This is a peer review papers reviewed by all of us, and I'm very happy that all authors consider the inputs from the other authors, and also from the organizers and the from the editors. Of course, all decision is yours, but looking at the end output of this, of all of your papers, I'm very proud of you in the way it has been presented. I was actually very encouraged looking at the way the point of view, the angle that you choose and you put in the report, because gender mainstreaming is very important. I'm working in regional organization like ASEAN, and in the last couple of years, putting gender equality and gender mainstreaming is a big homework for the sectoral bodies dealing with gender issues, like ASEAN, ICW, ASEAN Committee on Women, and ASEAN Commission on the Right of Women and Children. Gender equality and gender mainstreaming is also part of our role in ICHR, in ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, but not as big as ACW or ACWC. We have our own responsibility to our community and also institution to ensure that both quantity and quality, and the quality of discussion on gender equality continue to be attached to our discussion on human rights. The way I see this publication in relation to the importance of gender mainstreaming as a topic in the region is to look at the assessment of the implementation, the respect, protect, fulfill right of women based on CEDAW. As been presented by the authors, there are a number of progresses, there are a number of creative ways to fulfill rights, but we still have so many challenges. Some of the authors look at the challenges from the perspective of very individual and very intimate relation with the object of the study. For instance, the villagers, the former migrant workers, single moms. So these are some of the groups in women issues that hardly looked at. So I was very happy reading the discussion, the analysis, more importantly to hear voices of these women. Reading the essays, I felt like these women talking to me, and that's because of the authors having very good, very skillful in bringing these ideas on the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Yun, for sharing your experience during the editorial process. And I will revert back to Joel. Do you have any experience, including the editorial process, that you may have noticed?
Thank you very much, Tunggul, and thank you very much. And again, I echo what Ibu Yun said. Congratulations to Universitas Gadjah Mada for embarking on this great initiative, academic initiative on gender mainstreaming in Southeast Asia. And to answer your question, why is it important? Gender is part of our lived experience, not just in Southeast Asia, but throughout the world. It informs how we behave. It informs what choices we make or what choices we cannot make in our daily lives. And with the structures and the systems that are placed at the moment, they very much influence how gender is being viewed, is being practiced all throughout at the local, national, and regional level. So it's definitely undeniable to discuss gender from an academic standpoint. And I think based on my experience as an editor, I am very happy that this is done in a collaborative manner. It is very much a nurturing process where there is a discussion between and amongst authors, and more importantly, inputs coming from authors themselves and how they view each of the issues very well. And this is something that is quite groundbreaking and definitely advances what gender mainstreaming is all about. I think what this very monograph also contributes to the existing knowledge. And I just want to add some of my thoughts here. I think the word advancing means that there are indeed elements of within systems, within our ways of life related to equality and non-discrimination, although there are also aspects that have to be strengthened or improved. There are indeed challenges, particularly amidst the pandemic that have surfaced over these past years. I think what this monograph had done is that we were able to identify and also challenge binary approaches to gender. When we talk about gender, we don't talk about just the normative, the conventional idea of gender. We also looked at sexual minorities, the LGBTQI experience in the region. I think more importantly also is that we've encouraged homegrown analysis. This is a monograph produced for and by Southeast Asians, forging connections between regional, national, and local gender experiences. And as you will see, you will be reading in this monograph that there are definitely intersections and complexities when it comes to our agenda for gender mainstreaming. And I think I also would like to commend and highlight the papers that have not been selected for this topic. It was a difficult process for us to select which ones will be chosen, which ones will be part of this monograph. And I encourage more of our colleagues within the academe and even outside of the academe to be part of this movement. I think otherwise, I'm very happy with the process and I'm very proud that I'm part of this monograph. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jill. I would like to highlight that there are some contributors that enlightenment sort of, and to raise the issue that has been unheard for so a long time, including how to eradicate the violence against women in many countries that happens in Indonesia in particular. And this salient issue has reached into the conclusion that the workforce and the workers' alliance is also impacted from the gender issues or gender-based violence in Southeast Asia. Well, do you think what can be drawn from this multi-dimensional issue that happens in Southeast Asia, in the level of our societies, in the level of our communities, or even in the policymaking process. Ibu Yuyun or Joel, you may.
What is the question again?
What can be drawn if we selected the topics that explore the societies and the phenomenon that happens around us? Do you find any correlations among the communities and the policy making process, and what should be done in terms of eradicating gender-based violence?
Well, in terms of policies, I think the authors have been highlighting number of important points. For instance, participation of women is very important. Whether or not it is a woman issues or not woman issues, or like general issues like circulating food during COVID-19 or support social assistance, women voices, concerns need to be there. Women need to be consulted before any project to be done by policymakers or by executors, by governments, or at the NGO level also. So women concern participations had been highlighted several times in the books. Tunggul, actually, I want to listen to authors to discuss their papers because I think my role as an editor is in this time is already limited. So I would like to hear the authors how they experience writing this, doing research on women and gender equality in the region, and especially also the experience of joining this project more.
Sure. Before we dig deeper into our content in our ASC Monograph 2021, Joel, do you have any comment for?
No, I think we just need to keep talking about it. I think in this age of information and technology, and this is what the monograph can definitely contribute, is that we open the floor, open the opportunity for people to talk about. I think the worst thing that we do at this point is that we silence violence, that we ignore any potential harm to people, and this is also our as human rights advocates. It's something that we should ensure that no one is silenced, that no one is marginalized in this day and age of information, of technology, and provide them with the opportunity to express themselves. And this is the very contribution of this monograph. There are multiple ways also of addressing violence and discrimination in society, but this is just one of them. We need to keep on talking about it.
Sure. Thank you, Joel. So in the next session, we will hear more from our authors and the co-authors of ASC Monograph 2021. And in this occasion, we have Mia Hyun. If I may invite you to share your papers.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and
Yes.
clear.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, first of all,
in your paper, I'm sorry. So in your paper titled "Violence Against Women in ASEAN: Governance Condition for Policy Reform," can you give us a sort of background of your paper and how you raise this issue and why this issue considered important?
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to speak on this very important topic. So my research is based on it's based on looking at the implementation of the ASEAN Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, which was ratified by the 10 member states in 2004. And again, I believe in 2013, and accompanied by a regional plan of action. The ASEAN Secretariat has also put in considerable effort in developing guidelines to help build capacity of member states to implement the regional plan of action on elimination of violence against women in a coherent form, which is up to sort of minimum standards, right? Global minimum standards. My research looks at particular countries who have done quite well, shall we say, relative to others in terms of adopting the policy actions outlined in the RPA. And so I'm looking at the governance conditions which underpin that. And so some of the key findings that I'd like to highlight include having a robust national women's machinery. So having a very strong, either Ministry of Women's Affairs, or in the case of countries like Laos and Vietnam, a Lao Women's Union, with a very prominent, powerful, and vocal leadership, right? Who has access to cabinet meetings or to, presidential or prime ministerial decision-making levels. So this is actually quite important. The other key finding is openness to learning from good practice. And there are a lot of examples of good practice on different policy issues scattered across the ASEAN region. And so my paper attempts to highlight that as well. And so the ASEAN Secretariat, I believe, is also trying to pull together examples of this good practice and to publish those and disseminate those for broader learning. So I'll stop there. If you have some follow-up questions, I'd be happy to also discuss more.
Do you have any comment from Ibu Yuyun and Joel? According to Mia Hyun's paper? Well, so I want to dig deeper into your paper, Dr. Mia. The challenge that we have been meet in Southeast Asian context, that this really pushed all of ASEAN member states to take a firm stand and to pursue preventive and protective measure for both national and regional agenda. Do you have any recommendation on this issue, on this challenge? How can this be done in the future?
Okay, well, there is one very high-level recommendation, which might be a little controversial, but most recommendations are, and that is that, the ASEAN region at large is one of the only regions in the world that doesn't have a legally binding convention on the elimination of violence against women. So other regions actually do have those in the Americas, in Africa, and in Europe. And so one suggestion might be to actually translate the declaration into a convention and to make it legally binding. There's a legally binding convention on trafficking, for example, right? So that could be one very strong recommendation. The other recommendation to explore is to bring together the work on eliminating violence against women with the work on trafficking, because even though the incidence is different and the way it manifests itself is different, the responses and the service providers are often similar, right? And so there are some countries, such as in the Philippines, who try to bring this together, the service response mechanisms a little bit more. And the other high-level recommendation is to tie together any national action plans on violence against women with budgeting process, because unless there is a budget and resources allocated to these policy commitments, it will be very challenging to actually move forward to implementation. And so it's adopting a policy is one thing. It's an important first step, but allocating sufficient budget to ensure implementation and human and technical resources to this exercise is actually the next step to take it further. So perhaps something to explore is looking at a coherent system which will bring together the policies, the plans, and the national budgeting processes to ensure implementation. I hope that helps.
So to ensure the implementation of the violence against women or the mechanism, are you can you give us a recommendation in the context of the institutionalization of the ASEAN mechanism, of course? And may I hear from you, Ibu Yuyun, in terms of the institutionalization of the gender-based violence in the regional level? Do you have any experience in this issue?
I guess you refer to ASEAN, yeah. At the moment, at the regional level, there are two institutions. I mentioned earlier, ASEAN Commission on the right of promotion protection of women and children's rights, and the other one is on ASEAN Committee on Women. So the difference between the two, the ASEAN Commission on ACWC supposed to be the commission to work on the right of women and children, while the ACW is more sectoral bodies working on policies in relation to women. At the moment, both institutions or bodies have come up with the ASEAN strategic framework on gender mainstreaming in the region. So it require and ask individual sectoral bodies to take some efforts to mainstream gender in whatever they can in their institution. And they also come in this strategic framework, they come up with accountability mechanism as well as monitoring mechanism and coordination mechanism. So these are something, well, while ASEAN has gradually opened for more coherent, because they have been criticized of being silo in their work and approaches, now they are gradually becoming inclusive cross communities and cross sectors. But there are a number of challenges in terms of institution and structure, which institution that should put together all the information, achievement, and so on and so forth. So this is also the question during our conversation in relation to the implementation of counter-violent extremism. It is cross sectors, cross community approaches, but who should be collecting all the achievements? It is not some TC or senior official on transnational organized crime, because it's more on political security. So it requires a body that put together all things. So number of existing institutions are there, but to what extent they can accommodate this kind of need, it's something else. So actually, I'm in this kind of discussion, I'm worried ASEAN becoming too difficult, too rigid, too complicated in doing something that actually can be done in simple ways. For instance, on gender mainstreaming, since it is the focal point of this topic is ACW, despite the fact that it is the body under social cultural, but the body can be given more mandates to be able to pick some of the achievement from the three communities. So because talking about institutionalism sometimes is more we talk about assumption, we talk about power relation, we talk about structures, and it become too detailed and complicated. So in the end, we become too technical very often. That's what I found working inside the system. But I think the issue as important as gender mainstreaming should not be complicated by the structure, but rather how to make sure the structure support the realization of gender mainstreaming. I think Mia's papers on women access to policy making, decision, policy and powers. That's very important. We need that, and then this kind of right of women to access institutions should not be hindered by the complication of the structure. But in ASEAN itself, a number of initiatives are there. A number of discussions more on gender mainstreaming and gender equality also appear in 3 communities. Questions about lack of system is also there. It's just I just put some concerns on possibility of making gender equality complicated by structure, not on substance. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any comment on this, Dr. Mia?
Well, I think from the ASEAN, I agree not to overcomplicate. I think that doesn't really help. And I think from the ASEAN side also to dialogue with ministries of finance as well, not just ministries of women's affairs and you know, those types of governmental bodies, because that's a bit sort of you know, telling the people who already know what to do, right? So it's more a question of you know, building the advocacy network and building those links to a broader community of government agencies, and starting in particular with ministries of planning, ministries of finance, who need to be brought into the picture. I think that's very important. And if, you know, if there is a way that ASEAN can do that at a regional level, I think it will be incredibly impactful, actually. And the gender mainstreaming framework offers an excellent platform to actually do that. And given that it was recently launched and it is the current platform for ASEAN in terms of, you know, the gender policy dialogue, I think the opportunity is there, you know, to actually push forward on that.
Yes, echoing what Ibu Yuyun and Dr. Mia said about the let us not overcomplicate this issue and in the bureaucracy process and the power structure in the regional level, rather than in the formation of the multi-sectoral coordination of the mechanism for the violence against women's policy in Southeast Asia. As mentioned in your paper, Dr. Mia, you give the recommendation in terms of the ways forward to move from the policy adoption to the level of the implementation. And Joel, do you have any comment on this issue? I'm sorry, yours, Joel. Yours.
No, I'm glad that it's been included in the monograph and this conversation is being put forward and it's being surfaced. But I think the complications on gender in Southeast Asia is quite diverse. Again, I think there is a constant need to challenge the understanding of gender amongst member states. Again, looking at it from a binary perspective, very much is quite constricting. We have issues such as the LGBTQI issue that is part of the gender conversation. I don't really know when ASEAN will be ready to talk about it, but definitely if we come up with an agreement, it should be something that has to be recognized at the very least. And again, we refer to the international standards when we talk about gender, and most, if not all, of the member states of ASEAN are state parties to the CEDAW, and CEDAW has become more inclusive in terms of its view on gender, not just of women. But I think we are getting there, and I like how Dr. Mia framed it from a resource perspective as well. We cannot just establish standards without implementing processes. So what you mentioned about resourcing and putting much investment on structures, national and local structures for gender mainstreaming, I think will make it more meaningful, particularly when we get to the point of achieving an agreement amongst member states.
speaking of the policy implementation, Joel, of course, and when we talk about the gender mainstreaming progress in Southeast Asia, it cannot be separated from the important and essential environmental factors that includes the democratic governance in Southeast Asia and the high level of the engagement of the women itself in Southeast Asia, the movement and the civil society that that can boost the policy into action. Do you have any possible like what can be done in near future in performing this policy approach to be effective? I want to hear from Joel or Dr. Mia perspective.
I'll give it to Dr. Mia first.
Okay. By the way, full disclosure, I'm not a doctor yet. You have to wait 2 more years, please. But I like hearing it. It's very motivational.
Advancing your PhD program through this monograph.
I know. I'm seeing the future. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the question is, let me just capture this question. It was about how to move forward. Is that what you're saying? Okay. I think it's very important that there should be more regional sharing. As I mentioned earlier, I think there are a lot of very good examples of good practice of how different member states have, in isolation, developed some very innovative ways to implement the various policy actions in the regional plan of action. And I think the more that these innovations and the more that these achievements can be highlighted and shared in an accessible way with the other member states will be very helpful. So I think, in the first instance, that's very important. I think that adequate documentation and reporting and data collection is also important. And as researchers, in the research community, I think we can all appreciate that. And so I also believe that the ASEAN Secretariat has developed regional guidelines on data collection. On various aspects of the VAO policy reform agenda. And I think it would be quite helpful to make more use of the various instruments that the ASEAN Secretariat has put forward.
Thank you. Ibu Yuyun, do you want to give any comment on this?
Yes, I think democracy is very important for gender equality because democracy allows different voices. So we need different voices from women, from other sexes as well, to be allowed to be heard, not only to be said, but also to be heard and respected and transformed into policies. Democracy also allows a gender equity or gender justice to mushroom because if we see not all countries in Southeast Asia are democratic, but in the undemocratic countries, women participation is still there. But in what way, in what role, whether or not they are located or they are situated into more important position or just accessories. So I think democracy allow us not only to assess the quantity but also the quality, where women in the process of making decision, where women in the process of the implementation of policies, where women in number of areas. So I think democracy is very, very important element to make gender equality realized.
Sure. Thank you, Ibu Yul, for your comment. So, Joe?
Yeah, I think from the perspective of democracy, we are very aware that democracy in Southeast Asia is viewed from different standpoints. Again, the concept of democracy is practiced and is viewed from quite opposing views in the region. I think, again, this is where intersectionality, the intersectional approach comes in very much importantly. And I think if really want to move forward in the short term, we need to understand gender mainstreaming in situations where there is a rise in authoritarianism, and we can now see trends within authoritarian regimes that are misogynistic, that are that encourage violence as a way to achieve solutions, and this very much will affect our agenda towards achieving gender equity, gender justice. So if and this is where the academics comes in, putting and this is how also regional systems and mechanisms will be constructed if authoritarian regimes continue to be popular and continue to rule in our member states. And an understanding of potential opportunities of getting them on board, and how we can make sure that gender is not sidelined or is not harmed along the way. Early warning signs, perhaps analysis on how we can make sure that we get to protect our agenda amidst authoritarianism is I think very crucial in moving forward. Also, the impacts of the pandemic in all of this would also be very important, because again, how resources are rechanneled and how the agenda of governments of the day view a post-pandemic world is also very crucial. So I think these are the things. Again, this is very complex, diverse, but I think by engaging other academics, by engaging policymakers in the conversation would be a good first step.
Interesting point, Joel. Now I will give time for our audiences who wants to raise the questions directly to our authors. Mia Hyun, if you want to ask a question, please type the question into the chat box or raise your hand to ask directly to the authors. If none, I would like to explore further into the topic that the woman inclusivity in Southeast Asia may hinder the progress of the gender mainstreaming itself. From your own experience or your own research, Mia Hyun, can you give us a sort of an example in a particular country that this situation might be happened in the status quo?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I'm not sure I fully grasp what you're looking for.
Well, in terms of the woman inclusivity that may hinder the progress of gender mainstreaming itself, Mia Hyun, do you find any interesting point that that needs to be raised?
Well, I think one of the findings, actually, from my own research on what helps move sensitive and complex gender policy issues such as violence against women further and pushes it out across government is having very strong networks and connections, right? Not just within and amongst women in the polity, but also across other line agencies, right? For example, having a good, having connections between ministers, right? Ministers of women's affairs, ministers of health, of justice, of economy and finance, etc. Having connections across the technical sort of, the mid-level bureaucrats, having those, strengthening those connections. And then as Ibu Yuyun pointed out at the beginning, a strong and robust and inclusive women's civil society movement, and bringing that movement to the policy dialogue table is also very important, and listening to the voices of those who are actually working on the front line and who really are seeing, what is happening on the ground and not just sort of, at this sort of higher policy level. So I think in terms of, inclusion in decision making, it has to be looked at many different levels and across many different stakeholders as well. And a final point actually is also bringing in the power of the parliament. And so in many countries you have women's caucuses in parliament, but the extent to which parliamentarians can also be brought into that policy dialogue. They often are sort of left at the end to sort of approve legal reforms, etc. But if they can be brought in sort of more upstream, I think that would be quite helpful as well.
Okay, thank you, Mihan. I can see from Joel, you raise your hand.
Thank you very much, Tunggul. I just want to ask, because you've studied this comprehensively, Mia, are there any potential entry points as to including the discussion on LGBTQI in the regional systems that you see, or even at the national level? Perhaps this is something that we can share also with our friends from the LGBT rights movement. What could be a good potential entry point?
Okay, this is actually a very good question, and it's sort of the next frontier, if you will, in terms of gender equality and gender mainstreaming. So it's not just looking at the binary, but looking at the multiplicity and diversity in the community. And there are a number of countries in their most recent round of gender policies, whether it's their National Action Plan on eval, whether it's their National Action Plan on gender mainstreaming, have started to look at intersectionality. I can highlight, only based because I know this country quite well, Cambodia, and they have a program called the Access Program, which is funded by DFAT, which looks at both gender-based violence. It also looks at disability, and it manages to do a nice merging of the two. And it has a principle from the beginning on intersectionality. And so the policy, the way that the program is designed is to ensure that the services are reaching all the different vulnerable groups and all the different groups in their unique situations, right? Which will include LGBT. So I can definitely say that is a very good model, a good example. I'm not saying it's the only one. I just happen to be quite familiar with it. That's all. So I think that, yes, in this new round of policy reforms, there is a very strong window of opportunity to introduce this. And there are examples, within the region. And again, holding up examples within the region, I think is very important, because there is that neighborhood effect, right? If you see your neighbors doing it, then it's like, okay, this is possible, right? I can also do the same.
Thank you very much.
Okay, do you have anything to follow up, Joe? In regards to the inclusivity and the unique experience in each of every ASEAN member states that may hinders the embracement of the gender equality, especially in the LGBTIQ community. Sure. If none, I would like to invite our.
May I also contribute to the question?
Sure.
I think, well, the writers in the book mentioned about so many aspects of actually challenging why inclusivity is not there yet. The idea of how people think about institution, how people think about experiences matters. But in my personal experience, Cynthia Enlo's question, "Where's the women?" is always useful. So, for instance, when you have in a crowd, you try to find where's women in the institution, where's the women voices, where's the women contribution, where's the women roles, where's the woman's chair, where's the woman's place, where's the woman, so many question, but started with the question very simple as introduced by Cynthia Enlo, where's the women? Even within the women, you continue ask, where's the women? Within the woman crowd, within the woman project, within the women initiatives, because the women use plural. So we can see I think the papers from what is the Timor-Leste question about this support for assumed to be for women, but women did not necessarily get the advantages of that kind of project. So this simple question has been very useful for me to question different, to challenge the policies, to challenge the initiative, to challenge the project and approaches. But I hope this is not a new thing. This is something that is already maybe 30 years old or maybe more as it was introduced as an analysis. But as of now, as perhaps the book has shown, the question remain very, very important to be questioned. The term women can be changed into LGBT. Even in the LGBT's project, where's the LGBT? I think number of initiative in Indonesia, the group of LBT question about where are the LBTs in the LGBT project, because by questioning this, we realize that everyone is not equal. Every sexual orientation is not equal to be treated, and how they contribute to the approaches and the thinking. Again, this simple question has been useful for me personally in analyzing situation, approaches, program, policies, and decisions.
Well, speaking from your side, Joel, as an LGBTIQ activist, do you find any entry point that we can get through in the ways forward in implementing the equality itself?
Well, there are a lot of, either we really mainstream the issue across the board, or we, again, I think the right to health has always been a conventional way, a conventional entry point. But I think I think from a standpoint of equality, we really cannot deny the intersectional approach, meaning that we really need to depart from a binary approach to viewing gender. If that is something that we can make the member states agree on, then I think that would be a good entry point. How the level of their acceptance, of course, varies, but I think this is I think this agenda is quite a long journey to take. But again, including it in the agenda would already be a milestone, because this is normally viewed as a taboo issue. Again, again, it has to have I mean, it still operates on a consensus manner, no? But if we get this on the agenda to just discuss it, then I think it won't be as progressive as we want, but I think it would be a good start. Again, not including this issue would deny a lot of other issues that come with it, no? But we'll get there. I think, of course, from the movement, from the civil society perspective, I think not losing hope in the system. There is a system. There is a regional organization. There's a regional body that is there that we can maximize. But I think, again, the energy, it depends really on the energy, right, and the resources that we have. Yeah. So that's the thing. I think we need to have more and more academic contributions to this conversation, because I think academics still carry a level of credibility among states. If we can have more academics look at gender from a non-binary approach, a perspective, including LGBTQI issues in their discussions and analysis, then I think we can also be a few steps closer to that, to putting it in the formal agenda of this intergovernmental body.
Interesting point, Joel. Now,
And that's
I will
something
give-
maybe that I can suggest to UGM, if we can have a monograph dedicated for SOGI mainstreaming, then perhaps it's something that we can submit to the to ASEAN member states.
Sure, Joel. We will have a more conversation about it
Right. It's
in a different project. So
put
I will
in the note. Thank you.
thank you, Joel. I will give the time for other authors who contributed in our ASC Monograph 2021. Vanessa Febrilli, may I invite you to the room? So Vanessa Febrilli contributed in the paper titled Advising the State's Action in Protecting the Reproductive Rights of Female Laborers in Garment Industry, a case study of women production laborers in the Setu Garment Factory, West Java. So good afternoon, Vanessa.
Good afternoon, Tunggul. Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, loud and clear. And would you mind to present your findings in the papers that you wrote for the ASC Monograph?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Tunggul. First and foremost, I want to express my gratitude to ASC UGM for giving me this opportunity to join this meeting right here, and also good afternoon to Miss Yuyun and also Mr. Joel. And yeah, I'm very glad that this monograph is published today, and I want to thank you for all the ASC team member to also inviting me and making the opportunity for me to join the monograph and contributing in writing the paper, and that hopefully will be like helpful in a focus on gender mainstreaming and strengthening the major implementation for all the gender equality, especially to influencing the policymaker in making the policies and other significant area that should also using the gender mainstreaming approach. So yeah, for this for the brief introduction about the paper that I wrote, I was contributing to writing the paper that focused on the gender mainstreaming and the workforce. So the topic of my paper is basically will focus more with the fact that like up until now, the Indonesian governments still have a very much like a neglection towards like workers in general. So as we know that like women workers have their own issues of like a lot of injustice issue and cases in their workplace. And for the topic, I chose the garment industry to be more specific in the fact that the majority of the production sector of garment industry are women. And to be more specific, in like poor women, a lot of like disabled women and other significant marginal community that came from women. And I have like several primary data that shows that most of the garment women worker are still facing a lot of injustice, such as like work harassment, and a lot of like long hours work, gender-based violence, as well as some of the pandemic issues during this COVID-19 period. For example, like they cut they cut the women's job in terms of like making them in working at home, but not specifically returning them in the workplace and etc. So the vulnerability position of women in the work environment This reflects many acts of like injustice, one of which is the emergence of violence in the workplace, sexual harassment, and any kind of related stuff that I've mentioned before. And in practice, policymakers, especially in the Indonesian government, are increasingly ignoring some of the workers' rights. For to be more specific, in the women issues, especially like in the implementation of the omnibus law, as we can also see in Indonesia, which was passed before into 2020 and placed workers in the most vulnerable position. So the study that I wrote in this paper will use the case of the workers in the garment industry, which is the company that also absorbs women workers the most. So yeah, the vulnerable position of women workers, laborers, will also be strengthened by the use of, I use the concept of the gender division of labor, which also indicates the most basic fact that also describe the existence of gender-based work discrimination and also the neglect of women workers' right in relation to their reproductive system as well. Because as we know, women also face with a lot of like disadvantage based on their identity as a woman itself, and how the reproductive system is also very related and also attached with them. So yeah, using this case of the female garment laborers, I also have all the empirical data that have been coming from the Setu area, West Java in Indonesia. And also the study also presented a lot of like women voices that originating from the laborers workers itself. So implication for the practice and also advocacy, I also presented as at this paper, and also all the recommendation that I also presented on how the policymaker could also make a lot of significant change for the better, especially relating to this case of gender inequality in the workplace. I think that's a little bit information about my paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. In your paper, you highlight about the influences of omnibus law into the female reproductive rights. Can you explore more on that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. On the paper, I mentioned a lot about the omnibus law, as we also known as the Workers Act, right, in the Indonesia. So basically, the omnibus law was stated in, it was passed in 2020, and there are a lot of like sort of like problematic area in that act implementation. For example, like the government's a lot of negligence on the government regarding the protection of workers, specifically for the female workers. For example, like their menstruation rights, and also how the government didn't even mention about how to protect about women vulnerability in terms of their reproductive system, and also a lot of like negligence on a lot of like common issues that came from the female laborers, especially in regards of their vulnerability. For example, how women also face a lot of sexual harassment, and also regarding to their position as a woman. So I think that's the significant point that I pointed out, that I mentioned a lot in the paper, and how it also my recommendation towards that is also to make the policymaker will also include a lot of like concentration and on how to protect women worker more, especially in regard of their sexual and reproduction health, also needs to be regulated by the government in laborers' workplaces.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. Joel or Ibu Yun, do you have any comments on this paper?
Thank you, Vanessa, for the papers. I think it come to realization after so many ILO conventions, and how technical it is. The convention has been. Still, gender mainstreaming is not yet mainstreamed. Gender perspective is not yet mainstream, especially at the level of locality, as your paper has shown. Initially, I think in one of the conversation, you also mentioned lack of inspection from labor responsible agencies, but when you go deeper, it is not only lack of inspection, but lack of gender perspective. It is not there, so it is not seen as important. And I think your paper is very, very important to show that, look, we are still in this, we are not supposed to be in this stage because it has been there for so long. And I think that's important of assessing and investigating how far this because gender mainstreaming, gender equality, gender perspective has been celebrated in many ways at the elite level, but when you look at into the life of individual, like the female workers in the factory, it is not there yet. They don't experience the importance, the expected result from gender perspective into policies in the very lower level, the practice level. So yes, I think reading your paper, I come to a realization, because years ago I was also worked as a consultant for ILO, looking at how, to what extent gender perspective has been included. I went to Tangerang. The situation apparently not that too different from your paper. So still, we are still there, regardless. Years had been gone for many. So like in my concluding remark, perhaps it is not only the institution, but lack of gender perspective, or lack of importance on how gender perspective is into to be mainstream, to be integrated in the policies and the implementation of the policies. Thank you for the paper.
Joe, do you have any comment?
No, I just also want to highlight the inclusion of the business sector as part of, as an important sector that should be fulfilling rights of women and sexual reproductive health rights at that. And I think how this is fulfilled by the business sector is a continuing conversation. We are moving from a CSR perspective to a business and human rights perspective, and that means that we cannot deny the needs and also the aspirations of workers and women workers at that, and how that can be integrated in policies. I am currently involved in looking at workers' voices and how gendered workers' voices can be included, not just in policy, but how solutions and how to make businesses much better for the workers and also for their clients. So this is something that maybe your paper can, particularly in the garment industry. The garment industry is not just found in Indonesia, but it is seen across the region, no? And how women workers are very instrumental in providing profit for the businesses. But I think it is about time for businesses to look at how integral workers are in this whole business system. So I think, and this is something that you have put forward in the monograph. That's why we thought that it would be very important to have your article included. Thank you very much.
Do you have any comment?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Yuyun, and also Mr. Joel for all the comments. And yeah, I do also agree with the most significant part is also like sharpening the companies as for the business owners regulation, especially like it also happens with the export industry most of the time, you know, in the garment industry. For to be specific, we know that a lot of like fashion industry, especially in garment, came from a different country, but they make all the employees most in the like poor country and like in Southeast Asian, for to be specific. And yeah, I think like this is like the most important to do more like protection for the employees and using the gender mainstreaming approach to also analyze every decision and also the regulation that the company and the business sectors make in the future. This will also like require a lot of efforts from the communities and also organization and hard work collaboration from various parties that can assist in supervising this business performance and also the owners. Yeah, I think that's to be commented.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. And I would like to remind again to all the participants that have joined in this webinar. We would like to include your voice in the conversation. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to type them in the chat box or raise your hand in the chat room. If none, I would like to give the floor to our next contributors of our ASC monograph. We have here Duratul Masudah and Shukran Subki, who wrote about the paper titled Unite to Empower, Exploring the Empowerment Movement of Single Moms Indonesia Community. Duratul Masudah or Shukran Subki, can I ask you to present your findings on your paper?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, the floor
Okay,
is yours.
okay, thank you so much for the opportunity given to us to speak about our paper submitted for the ASEAN ASC Monograph 2021. It's been actually a long process of writing the paper, including also the revisions and also the insights from Yuyun and also from Mr. Joel. So I'd like to express my gratitude also for the two editors of our paper and also for the other papers. Well, maybe you all have, some of you have read our paper inside the monograph. Basically, we talk about the role of community in raising the agency and also in helping single mothers in Indonesia to share their experience and also to help each other to talk about the difficulties and to find helps from each other. And we find also the important role of social media today, that the social media can unite single mothers, not only from big cities in Indonesia like Jakarta or maybe the surrounding cities, but also from many cities from in Indonesia. And we have for the data that we use in the paper, in the analysis, we interviewed the founder of the community itself and also 3 active members of the community. And during the conversation, I'm personally a mother, and I can. It was a bit emotional because how they share about the experience of raising a child on their own without the support from their spouse, and how some legal difficulties also that they face in Indonesia, especially. Might it's contributing to the whole of their experience as single mothers, and also they revealed to us some of the major difficulties that they face as single mothers, like financial difficulties and also stereotypes from the society, and how they navigate the mental health, their mental health, among others. And through the community, they find some support, some helps, and they found the community as a safe place to talk about their experience. Because also the community itself, it provides the members with several workshops, webinars that talks about mental health, financial management, and also about parenting, how to raise the children, and etc. Yes, also from our interviews, we found some of challenges that they are still facing, and one of them is political support. They might get some social support from family and from their friends, but still they are lacking of political support in form of policy, in form of regulations that support their social ends. Yes, I think that's just a brief explanation, a short brief about our paper. Maybe I can hear some comments from Bu Yun or also from Mr. Joel.
Okay, Ibu Yun or Joel, if any.
Thank you very much for writing the paper. It's very, very important. Very least papers discuss about single mother so far, as I know of. And writing like this always bring the emotion, the experiences of women themselves, which may be different from one experience to another, and that is why it is very important to surface this kind of experiences. And I congratulate you, and I think there are two authors, right, for this. Congratulate your hard work to bring the voices of single moms here. I think there are many areas to be explored further. Perhaps this is the first step that open up for more discussion. Social media has been used as a coping mechanism for some single moms so far, because they have engagement with social media. Perhaps then we can ask, what if the single moms do not have access to social media, for instance, for many reasons, or if they are coming from a different background, like in Indonesia we have Batak, we have Jawa, we have so many ethnic groups, whether or not they have a similar or differences in processing, internalizing, coping with problems. I enjoyed very much reading the papers. It's an eye-opener, because I haven't read similar topic in the past, and I thank you for bringing that knowledge to the book.
Thank you.
Joel, do you have any response in this paper?
No, thank you very much. This is also close to my heart because I was raised by a single mother. A single mother doesn't have much access to technology though. So, but it is something that we can see how technology impacts how we view things. I think social media has also brought about more private matters put on a more public domain. Is it good or is it not? It is, I think, something that we need to talk about much more. But I think what social media done is to really provide a space for solidarity among single mothers. But how do we bridge that gap between those who have access to technology and those who don't? There are a lot of issues among single mothers that we may not know about because they're not put on social media. And how do we do that? It is a challenge that we put on perhaps on this research team who may want to explore that further. Again, I think single mothers are increasingly ruling the world. The idea of family has been challenged. The conventional idea of family has been challenged by how single parent raised families or children are brought up, and this is good because then we will see how we continue to challenge this conventional norm of family, and how their rights have to also be promoted and respected. So again, I kudos to everyone, and I look forward to more of your work. There's so much to be done. If this can also be replicated in other parts of the region, then that would be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. So, Roto, based on your interviews and findings on your papers, do you find any solution in bridging the gap between the single moms and the technology itself?
Well, according to our informants, the three of our informants, they are not having any gap to the technology because maybe it's the factor of the education, and also the three of them are working mom, so they are familiar with technology, especially with social media. And actually, I guess because we were not interviewing all of the members. If one or a single mother wants to be part of the community, they have to register online. So I guess everyone who wants to become the member or eventually become the member, there is no issue with technology gap. So yes, for maybe homework for more, or to reach more single mothers who are not part of the community. So maybe from that we can find more experiences, maybe because the three informants, most of the members of the community are living in cities. So I guess maybe if we can find some informants from villages that they are not really used to technology, it can be there will be more insights about the experience of single mothers in Indonesia or single motherhood in Indonesia. But yes, unfortunately, the members of the community mostly are living in big cities, and there is no issues with technology gap.
Sure. Ibu Yuyun, do you have any response?
Yeah, I would like to suggest perhaps if you can link between coping mechanism and for the next research, perhaps single mom and coping mechanisms, and perhaps there are a number of ways we can understand. There are many ways of single mom to deal with some challenges. One of them is joining a club through online, or joining a club in physical matter like arisan or meeting or like pengajian. And so perhaps having this differences of understanding different ways of single mom in establishing their coping mechanism, because establishing coping mechanism is another process. Sometimes you choose A, B, C, but you don't feel comfortable with the options, and then you go to certain mechanism. Can be one of the research subject to look at, whether it is religious, because it's based on the background of the mom, the preference, whether it is religious, whether it is more non-religious or others, or more other activities, just to capture the life of single mom. But also what happened if they are not single mom anymore? They married or remarried, whether or not it is how they deal with this changing of status, for instance. That's perhaps interesting to listen how women internalize and give meaning to their life. changing status, changing situation, changing coping mechanism. So perhaps this is a women knowledge that need to establish and to write in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Yun, for your recommendation for the upcoming research paper that needs to be done. And
Yeah.
now I will give the time for Shukran Subki.
Thank you. Can you hear my voice clearly? Tunggu.
I'm sorry, a little. Hello, can you hear my voice,
Hello?
Shukran?
Yeah, can you hear my voice also?
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So I would like to talk about the social media that is the starting platform for the single motherhood in Indonesia, and also uniquely several weeks ago or several days ago, there is some jokes about single motherhood in Twitter. Like if you're dating a single motherhood, you will be you will be brought into something like hell or something because. Okay, wait a minute. Maybe. Okay, can you hear my voice now?
It's broken.
It's a little bit unclear. You may have to replace your device, maybe.
How about now?
Okay,
Is it better?
It's clear.
Okay. So I will repeat my statement, my opinion. So I would like to talk about the social media again that has been mentioned by my colleagues, my sister, and also Bu Yun and Joe as well. Uniquely, several days or maybe weeks ago, I seen about something viral in Twitter, making jokes about single motherhood. Like if you're dating a single motherhood, you will be grabbed into something like hell or something because it's not only maintaining your partner, but also their children, something like that. So I think the real evidence that single motherhood also in social media has no safe place, something like that. So in my opinion, that this the establishment of this single motherhood Indonesia community in social media also is not only giving the safe place for single motherhood, but also raising the awareness for the people of general people to give attention and support to the single motherhood about their struggle and also the negative stigmas that, as you know, that in Indonesia, the traditional construction of an ideal family in Indonesia context promotes the existence of both father and mothers, and then some single mother receive negative stigmas and something like that. That's one of the main problems that should taken into account. So I think these social medias, besides giving the safe place for the single motherhood, also giving the raising the awareness for general people to take in consideration, taking more attention and support to single motherhood. And this also have been consistent in our paper as well. Maybe that's about my opinion. Thank you. I give the screen back to Mr. Tunggu.
Thank you, Shukran. Very interesting point from your side. I want to hear from Joel on this matter. Hello, Joel. Okay. May I refer back to Ibu Yun to give any response on this single mother issues?
Yeah, I think that's a very good observation that social media does not provide a safe space or place for single moms. Well, social media doesn't provide safe space for everyone. That is why I highlight on coping mechanism is important. I think the research look at coping mechanism of single moms by joining the club, which in this case organized through social media. But so that's the link here between social media and single moms. if you look at the you get deeper on the women, the identity of women, perhaps single moms will perhaps that has been what is this depiction that women who are single mom, they are experiences double or multiple discrimination in terms of the fact that they are women, they are single mom, they are perhaps divorced or not divorced. There are different discrimination for that kind of category, whether they are religious or not the religious, or they are rich or poor, urban, rural, and so many things, whether they work or do not work, and not to mention physical appearance. So I think this is our double, multiple layers of discrimination that face by and experienced by women in very specific status as single mom. And again, this is something that hardly discussed, which we need to provide the voices of single mothers' experiences on how they understand themselves, how they internalize the problem, how they realize possible coping mechanism, how they deal with all the problems they have as a woman, as a mother, as part of society, as living in urban or rural, and so many things. So again, your paper is another eye opener for us to understand different categories of women, which in this case is single moms.
Okay, thank you, Biyun. Jill, do you have any response?
I think Ibu Yuyun captured everything. I just want to highlight this new concept of brave spaces. More than safe spaces, brave spaces means that it's the people who are in the margins, who are defining, so that there's a rights element to it, because then they're not bound by any kind of rules, but any kind of moral expectations. It is an emerging concept and movement in the space of human rights, because when you talk about safe space, it's still about people conforming to the norms, but brave spaces means that there is sort of an ownership of the space and making sure that that space is being defined by the people who need and who have to enjoy that space. So but then it's a continuing conversation again, brave spaces. I think this is something also that is, again, social media, as what Ibu Yuyun said, is not safe for everyone. There's a lot of abuse happening, more than positive, more like positive activities. But I think social media is a good starting point again to make sure that there is solidarity amongst the experiences of single mothers, not just in Indonesia, but also throughout the region. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joel. And it looks like that we have covered all of the discussion in this webinar. And for the closing statement, may I invite Ibu Yuyun to give the closing remarks in regards to our monograph launching.
Thank you very much, Tunggul, and thank you very much again, everyone who have been putting your heart out and your brain in these papers. I'm sure anyone who read the monograph will find each of the essay has been very useful in bringing the women voices, women agencies, mechanism of coping with problems that they have. So it shows women are very different from one to another, but the rights of women remain almost the same as in CEDAW. So again, I think this kind of different kind of women is very important to be always highlighted, so that any policies will not see women only in single type of women who live in urban, who have a lot of privileges, because not everyone like that. So I'm very happy to read all the chapters, bringing the insights from our region as well as from your point of views. I'm sure it is going to be very useful. I'm not going to read my concluding remarks because it's already there. You will find the concluding remarks, but again, I cannot emphasize enough how important your contribution in this monograph to the way we perceive gender mainstreaming, gender equality, and the implication of lack of gender perspective into our daily activities, decision, and policies. Again, thank you very much for lighting the issue, and I will encourage everyone who come to this meeting or to see this webinar through YouTube to read the book, to read the monograph, both online or physical. I'm sure you will obtain some insights on how it has been, how gender equality and gender mainstreaming had been advanced in the region, and lack of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Ian, for your endless support as an editor board in the monograph, ASC Monograph 2021. And I will give the time for Joel to give the sort of closing statement.
Thank you very much. I just came from Norway, and what I saw there, I think Norway is known to be one of the countries with the highest level of equality. But what I really saw there, what I observed, is really the importance of having allies in the movement. Allies meaning those who support, those who champion gender equality and human rights. And this is something that maybe we can learn from the global north, the importance of having people who may not be experiencing gender-based violence, who may have also the power to influence policies. And this is, again, this monograph is a way to build allies, to build new allies, or to encourage existing allies to be part of the conversation. Again, we're not starting from scratch. I've said, have pockets, have elements of equality and non-discrimination in our policies, in our legislation, in our social practices, but we need to really start talking about how do we include other members, other sectors of society in ensuring, because they are part of this gender mainstream. When we talk about gender mainstreaming, it doesn't just talk about the LGBT movement, the women's movement, but we need to have everyone included in our agenda. So I think that's something that will and going back to this monograph, and I think I will still insist, if we have more efforts, not just from ShapeC, not just from UGM, but also within your institutions, if we can have more of these monographs and articles and essays put in public, having more people from Southeast Asia analyze and discuss these issues, then I think we're paving the road really to what we think as a gender equal, a gender equitable Southeast Asia. Thank you very much. I'm very proud to be part of this project.
Thank you, Joel. Very engaging talks. And that is all the time we have for our webinar today. And I would like to say thank you for all the contributors, the authors, the editorial board, and for the very insightful discussion in today's webinar. And on behalf of ASEAN Study Center, thank you for joining us and taking time to view our webinar. We really appreciate you being here. My name is Untitled Chapter. Have a great day, and we will see you next time. And I will give the time to Dias. Thank you very much.
Thank you for moderating the session, Mr. Tunggul, and thank you again for the insightful discussion to all of our speakers. From today's discussion, I am confident we can learn and reflect on numbers of important takeaways. Thanks to all participants for joining today's discussion. Please follow our social media to learn more about ASEAN and to participate in our upcoming events. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at ASEAN Study Center UGM and follow us on our Instagram at ASC UGM. Also visit our most official website at aasc.visipol.ugm.ac.id. For all participants to receive your e-certificate, please complete the evaluation form that will be distributed. And on our screen, you can visit also the link on the screens. So we wish you safe and healthy future. This is Dia signing out. See you on our next event. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.